I'd like to introduce Dr. Luis Cortest. He's a professor at OU. Luis, you want to give us a little bit of info?
Well, I'm a professor. I've been at the University of Oklahoma for 35 years. I did my graduate work many years ago. I finished my PhD at the University of California, Berkeley, back in 1982. So that gives you some idea of how old I am. But I've worked a lot in the Spanish-speaking world. I had a junior Fulbright in Spain, in Madrid, and then I also took students many years to Mexico, to Puebla, Mexico City, and so on. And I've traveled also some, but I'm also the director of Spanish here at the University of Oklahoma. But I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you, Luis. I'm Marty Espinosa, and I have a varied background. I have law enforcement, banking, real estate, mortgage, you name it. But I'm proudest of my background in law enforcement in Seattle, Washington. And I was also for a time the chief of police in San Juan Pueblo. It's called a different name now, but that's where I was.
Okay.
And Jody, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jody Kirk. I am currently a behavior therapy technician. I've worked in the medical field relatively extensively for about 17 or 18 years. I've got about 17 years in security services working on the streets of Albuquerque. I've got about 8 years in pipe trades construction and a pipe trades engineering degree. I went through the union for that. Gentlemen who are sitting next to each other, would you mind reintroducing yourselves? I didn't hit the record button before when you guys first started recording. So when I first started recording, you were already into who you were.
Okay, I am Virgil Vigil. I am the president of the Protectiva, and I've held this position now for going on 4 years. My background is I'm a military guy. Spent 30 years in the Army. I retired colonel. I was a helicopter. I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I was a helicopter medical evacuation pilot. So I flew UH-1 helicopters, and I also was blessed that I was able to fly the King Air 200 as a turboprop aircraft. So in the military for 30 years, I was also for 2 years the airport manager of Santa Fe. I'm from here in Santa Fe. My family's all from Santa Fe. Actually, from Petco, Santa Fe area. My great grandfather was the first territorial native governor of New Mexico back in 1840, right after the Mexican era, 1848. And that's where our roots come from. And that's about all I have about myself. Just a lot of military background. Been in the military for 30 years. Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, my name is Patrick Varela. I'm the Secretario Tesorero here at the Unión Protectiva. Main function is reinvesting in investments for the organization and paying out death certificates, keeping the lights on, and so on. I'm the Chief Deputy Treasurer for Santa Fe County. I'm the former Treasurer for Santa Fe County. I did 2 terms. My family is was heavily in politics. My uncle was Representative Lucky Varela, was very powerful in the New Mexico legislature. My family goes back several hundred years in Santa Fe. The Varela side, we were one of the first 10 families here in this region, the settlers. And I'm also Ortiz from my mother's side, and also también we've been here centuries. So proud Santa Fe.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for all being here tonight. The reason I reached out in the beginning of this whole process here, which it's been a process, is because I'm from Santa Fe, and during the time that I was growing up, there was these very strong culture in Santa Fe of Hispanics. And it started with our religion, which in my case was Catholic. And it was also culturally strong in the heritage that we shared and the stories that we heard from our elders. And my last visits back to Santa Fe, which I'm back and forth, and I have lived there recently. It's been very disheartening to see what's gone on there. I've seen the families deteriorating. I've seen the belief in God going, and now I see a culture that is disintegrating because we are being forced out of our home, basically by outsiders that came in, which is fine if they come in, I don't care. But not when somebody brings in their beliefs and then I'm supposed to believe those things and go along with them. And I brought Dr. Cortest and reached out to Virgil Vigil because they are deep into this in what they do. Luis in his own way, and Virgil, I know you're tackling issues there at Santa Fe all the time, and trying to educate people, especially the youth. So I think what we're going to do is just open the meeting up to you, Virgil, and you kind of outline what is going on in Santa Fe, and then Dr. Cortez can help us with the cultural aspects of everything, because Luis and I are friends, and I talk to him like almost every Sunday after Mass, and it's amazing what this man knows. So I'll open it up to you, Mr. Vigil, if you want to start it out.
Okay, thank you. The Unión Protectiva, which we're members of, and I'm the president, and Pat is the treasurer secretario, was established in 1915, 3 years after New Mexico became a state. And it was established for 3 reasons. And we follow these. There's 3 pillars that we follow. One is Unión. Those are for the members of the organization and their families. The other one is Tracción, instructions, education for individuals from our organization. And the other one is protection of our culture, traditions, faith, and heritage. If I forget something, jump in. So that's basically what we're here for. Now, this organization, we have membership currently is 350 every year. Of course, our older generations are dying off, and we try to recruit the new members to come into the organization. This organization was created for those 3 reasons. And it was basically created in the east side of town, which used to be a barrio at the time, where most people, Hispanics, used to live. And that's where we had our salas, and that's where we had our meetings, and that's where we created at that time over there. Through the years, through the generations, we accept anybody into the organization as long as they meet the age requirement of 18 through 50, right? We changed it to 50, so they can join. So going back to the pillars, Unión, when a member dies of the organization, we help the family members. We're here to help the family members. If they request, we go and we pray the rosaries for the family members when they have their velorios, their wakes, and we attend the masses, and we give them flowers. And then we also give them a $3,000. $3,000 at one time would cover the burials for the families. Of course, you know that it doesn't do that anymore. It might cover now if they're cremated, but it's at least $3,000 does help the family somewhat. So that's what we do. We try to help the family, and anything that the family needs, they call us, and we're there to assist them because her husband was a member. There's a like organization that's called Unión Femeninas, the female organization. So there's a male organization and a female organization. They have their own rules. They work separately from us. We don't work together. They do use our satellite here for a meeting place. They come and they meet here monthly. We don't participate with them. They run their own organization, just like we run our own organization. So that's what we do.
Okay, and what kind of issues do you see culturally in Santa Fe that are taking place right now, and have been?
Okay, so that falls under the pillar of protection. Okay, our older folks who used to live on the mountains, on the mountain foothills, which is east of Santa Fe, and that's where the organization started. Of course, they pass on to a better life. Unfortunately, what happens? The families back then, there were large families. They had, and what happens normally, what has happened is we've had a large influx of people moving into Santa Fe. It's okay. We don't have a problem with that. The problem is that we see is that the people that are moving in are very rich people that are coming into Santa Fe, and they're giving the real estate has skyrocketed in Santa Fe, especially in the east side. So the families, once the parents die and the siblings, what happens, they want to sell because they've already made their life elsewhere. They've already moved on. And the only ones that were left were the parents. So they want to sell because they know that that property is worth millions of dollars. And it doesn't matter. I've seen that it doesn't matter how close the family is. When the parents die, there's always turmoil in the family, especially because if there's something of value, land, money, those things break up families. The families here break up because they want to sell, because they want their share of the property. That's the parents. They said, I lived here, live with my parents. I have a right to this portion. So that's what's happening. They're selling out. And they've gone to live elsewhere. What is the other problem that we have is when new people come in, these are very rich people, basically all very rich, millionaires, a lot of millionaires. What they come here, in fact, you'll see now very expensive cars driving in town. Anyways, when they come in here, it's okay to move into Santa Fe, okay? But it would be nice if they would assimilate into our culture, into our history, our traditions, but they don't. They come here from, like our mayor, comes over here from Portland,
You said Portland, Oregon.
and they try to bring with them their value systems, the way of life. So what they try to do is they try to change our history, our traditions, and our cultures to what they think it should be. Okay, what they think that should be according to them, and they don't want to assimilate to our history, our Hispanic history, culture, and our traditions. Is what's happening.
Okay, can I interrupt?
Of course.
Professor, can you give us some idea of what you have in mind? What's going on with the culture?
Well, first of all, let me say it's an honor to be here. I'm an outsider. I'm not from New Mexico. In fact, I didn't discover New Mexico for myself till just a few years ago. I need to tell you that up front. But I have been studying the history of Hispanic peoples in the United States for a long time. And what makes New Mexico very special to me as an outsider, is its Spanish history. And let me explain what I mean by that. Other places may have had Spanish presence even before New Mexico. One example is Florida. Florida early on had Spanish settlers, and that can't be denied. But in terms of continuous presence, in terms of the intensity of that presence, in terms of the overall effect that Spanish culture, and I'm saying Spanish, and I mean Spanish, I don't mean Hispanic, that Spanish culture has had. No state has had greater impact from Spain and the history of Spain than New Mexico. None. You can find other states that have way more Hispanic people. You can find states that have millions of Hispanic people today. California is a very good example. Another example is New York. New York. New York, California, even Illinois, but and Florida. These are the big ones. And then of course Texas, which has 3 cities with over 1 million Hispanic people: Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, and San Antonio. But that doesn't matter. New Mexico, what makes New Mexico special to someone like me who is interested in history is that before all of this, there was a presence, and especially, I would say, especially in the Santa Fe area, of all the Spanish culture that seems to have been preserved. When an outsider goes through New Mexico, like me, what do they see in all these little towns? Churches, crosses, from the Spanish, from that tradition. You see that. It's amazing to me. Santa Fe, the reason all these people are moving into Santa Fe, I can tell you right now why they're moving in. Because it's a world treasure. You go there, you see the place, and you fall in love with it. It happens to anybody who loves Spanish culture, who knows anything about Hispanic history. The tragedy of it is that the people who live there and have family who have always lived there are being pushed out, from what you're telling me. And that's a horrible thing. And I'll tell you another thing. You have to always, and please don't let me get carried away here, Marty, but you have to always begin with the schools and the parents. If you're not teaching the history of New Mexico in terms of its Spanish history, very, very important. Let me make a clarification that a lot of people miss when they talk about these subjects. One, they get away from the notion of anything Spanish because for them, Spanish doesn't sound right. And they always want to include everybody. And in their inclusivity, they talk only of Hispanic peoples. Well, New Mexico really is unique in this way. It has this profound Spanish history, but it also has a Mexican history, and it has a modern Mexican history. That's okay. That also needs to be embraced. What needs to be embraced in the schools is the Hispanic identity of New Mexico. You know, before I had been to New Mexico, I'd travel some in Colorado, and my wife and I would say, what a beautiful, beautiful place this is. When I went to New Mexico, I said, this is like Colorado, only it's Spanish. It's so much more beautiful to me. It's incredible. So I'm looking at this from an outsider's point of view, but it's very, very important to know that the treasure, the uniqueness of New Mexico is this Spanish history. And now also it's Mexican history is also a part of it. But it's also important to remember this. When anyone asks you, well, how long did New Mexico belong to Mexico? No one ever knows the answer to this question.
About 300
But
years.
actually, how long?
I believe it's
New
about
Mex-
300 years.
No.
No, New Mexico was under the Spanish flag from 1821 until 1849, I believe. We're under the Mexican flag, excuse me, under the Mexican flag.
All right. New Mexico is part of Mexico from 1821 to 1848. That's it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, that's it.
That is Mexico is not an independent nation until 1821. People just don't get this, especially Mexicans. Oh, that was always part of it. Siempre fue parte de México. Eso siempre fue parte de México. That's not true. That's not true. And also this, the Mexicans themselves, and this I do know because I've spent a lot of time in Mexico and I have family. My family is from Mexico. They want to deny everything Spanish. And what they
Yes.
don't understand is that most of their history is Spanish history. They're part of Spain. They're conquered by the Spanish. Think of this: 1521, and they don't break away until 1821. All those years. That's why you have all these cities that are colonial cities in Mexico. Amazing, beautiful colonial cities like Puebla, Querétaro, and so on. All right. But New Mexico is not part of Mexico very long. It's a very short time. Before
Good
that,
job.
of course, it's Spanish. I'll
Yeah.
let someone else talk for a while.
I want to introduce my cousin John Noel. He just joined us a little bit ago. John,
Yes, my
do you have any
apologies.
questions?
I have a question.
No, my apologies for I had some technical difficulties going on, gentlemen. But I just wanted to let everybody know my introduction. I am considered a coyote. Marty's my cousin. His wife's my cousin. My mother was born in Santa Fe. Her name was Maria Dominguez, and so my dad's side of the family is Kentucky. My mom's side is from here, from New Mexico, from Santa Fe, and so I really, my mother's side of the family I got to know much better than my father's. And one of the things that you're talking about, and I'm sorry, I apologize, Mr. Vigil, I think you were the one speaking first, is the battle that you talked about when it comes to property, and how that does rip a lot of families in Santa Fe apart. And I can tell you firsthand that my mother's side of the family dealt exactly with that thing, right there, where my grandfather built a home up on Otero Street near the Cross of the Martyrs, and two homes, actually, two small homes, and he had it in his will that it would be sold. But even around his will, which very specifically said what would happen, it created a lot of tension, a lot of animosity, and unfortunately, a lot of it still lingers to this day. And that was over 20 years ago. So that point you brought up, you're exactly right.
You know, our culture here in Santa Fe, the erosion of our culture, our people, our heritage started in the late 80s and continued, because if you guys remember at that time, the Santa Fe style was really popular and people were attracted at coming to it, and people offering families cash for their homes, cash for their property. And of course, we took it and we left. And it's sad to see that ever since then, our culture and our own people have been eroding away slowly but surely. Where, like you're talking, you go downtown and I don't see maybe two people that I know, and it's a shame that they pushed us, the ones that have stayed, to the south side of Santa Fe, to a whole different area, where the cost of living to live in the north side, you would have to make over $300,000 a year in income just to get a home there. On the south side, it's a lot different. So it's caused a lot of homelessness, unfortunately, from our own people, because we sold out and now they don't have homes. So they're either having to go outside of Santa Fe to Rio Rancho or elsewhere, or and they disappear from here. And I've always told people the Spanish culture is very circular. We may leave, but we come back. The Anglos don't do that. I have some Anglo friends, and it's like, well, I haven't seen my parents in 3-4 years. That's outrageous for Spanish people, because we see our familia daily, weekly, but we don't go more than a week without seeing them. So a lot has changed. And then to the professor, it's like, he's right. I saw a genealogy map of the United States, and New Mexico has the biggest population of Spaniards still to this day. And it's amazing that that state like that in our culture, a state like that, but we're still losing it.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with the professor what he said. Because remember, the Spanish were the explorers that had the mightiest navy, Armada, and they would explore.
I still have a question to that. My
Okay.
my question is I did the wrought iron for the Gutierrez Hubble House down here. They claim that the Gutierrez Hubble House is almost 200 years old, that the Territorial House is a little over 200 years old, and they tore it down about 10 years ago, and that the trading post in Winrock, Arizona, being part of the Gutierrez Hubble House, is also some 200 and some odd years ago, and that those two places, the Territorial House and the trading post, had Spanish soldiers posted at those facilities during those periods of time. So there's like this conflict from the Spanish places that you go to visit here that say that they were here for 200-300 years, but you guys are saying that it was only like a 20 or 30-year span here. So it's
No,
leaving
no,
me a
no,
little
no.
confused.
No.
That's a Mexican.
No, that's the Mexican era is what we're talking about. The Mexican era. See, the Spanish are the ones that the explorers. They went to Mexico. They went to Mexico City. They had a viceroy over there. He was under the King of Spain,
Right.
and this whole area was under the Spanish crown. Okay. Then they started to expand northward, and they came up because they heard that there were riches over here, and they expanded northward, and they came over here, and then in Oñate in 1598. Correct me if I'm wrong, doctor, but Oñate, 1592, he first settled in Winge, which you were talking about, which was San Juan.
Son one.
San Gabriel.
San Gabriel by San Juan. Okay. And then they moved from there, the capital, to Santa Fe.
Right.
Okay. So we've been here since the 1500s. But then, and what was happening at the time, and this is what we're fighting now, you have different Indians, Pueblos. The ones that live by the Rio Grande, the big river. It was called the Rio Grande because back at that time there was a lot of water. It's the biggest water source that there was in the river. The Pueblo people would live by there, and they would grow the three sisters.
Right.
The three sisters being corn, beans, and squash. That's all there was here. Okay. When Spain came, Spain brought everything else. Spain brought horses, chickens, cows, pigs, all the vegetables, the fruit trees, all that came from the old world. Silversmithing, all that, because metals, yes, silversmithing and wrought iron, that came from the old world.
Right.
None of that was indigenous to this part of the country. So what was happening is you had these other outlying Indians. I'm still confused whether they call them Indians or natives. I don't know which one. It depends who you're talking to.
The Dene.
The one,
They prefer to be
yeah,
called the Dene.
the name. Okay, so like the Apaches and the Navajos,
Right.
they live in areas where they don't have abundance of water. So what they would do is they would come over here to this valley over here, and they would fight with the natives here, and they would take their three sisters. And then they would take the slaves. They would take the women and the children as slaves, okay, to their homeland where they came from, okay. When the Spanish came here, they brought all these things. The Indians accepted the Spanish because they had all these things. If you go to the cathedral, the Santa Fe Cathedral, there's a cathedral park on the side of it, on the north side. There's a big monument there, the 400th Cuarto Centenario.
Mhm.
That statue has all the items that were brought from the old world to the new world.
Right.
It came from the old world to this new world. The Spanish are the ones that brought them here. And then what happened was they were here. They lived with the natives accepted them. those other Indians, then they weren't attacking them because the Spanish, who were better fighters and they had better equipment, they had muskets, they had swords and all that, they couldn't beat them, so they left the Pueblos alone. Then you had Popey. He was a from Tusuque or a Tusuque Indian. He didn't like what was going on, and he was in charge. And he got the other tribes to revolt, and they revolted. I'm getting dry. Excuse me.
In 1680.
In 1680 they drove the Spanish out. So that yes. So what they did is the natives. What they did, they fought the Spanish. They killed over 400 men, women, and children, and they drove them to El Paso del Norte, which is now Juarez. And they burnt the church. At the church, there was a statue, a wooden statue of Our Lady, the Virgin Mother. It was carved out of olive tree, and she's been carbon dated to the 1400s. She took that statue back with her to Paseo del Norte. When they also, what they did is remember I said they killed 400 men, women, and children, Spanish?
Right.
They also killed 21 priests. Because the Spanish, when they came here for a couple of reasons. One is to pass on the Catholic religion, okay? They were also looking for gold and silver, and to discover other lands, and that's why they came here. So what they did is they tied these priests onto horses, and they drug them around the streets until they died. That's why we have when you come here, you'll see a cross of the martyr on top of the hill. It's to honor those 21 priests that were killed. And a couple of them they took to the Pueblos, and the Pueblos stoned them to death, okay? The Spanish were driven out in 1580. The viceroy, because he gets orders from the king, he asked a nobleman, his name was Don Diego de Vargas, to come back and try to resettle this area. So in 1692, he came back. He stopped at Paseo del Norte. Of course, he was a noble. He was not a soldier, but he had soldiers with him. He had to have protection, and he brought some of the people from Mexico. They stopped there at Paseo del Norte. He found out about the statue of the Virgin Mary, and he says, I'm going to take her back to Santa Fe. So then he came back, and they came over here, and in the plaza where the cemetery is at, they camped there, and he made a promise. He actually asked for a intercession with the Virgin Mary. He says, if I am able to resettle Santa Fe, then every year what we will have to honor you for this is we will have masses, we'll have processions, we'll have vespers, and we'll have a celebration also known in the Spanish language as a fiesta. So that's why we've been continuing the fiestas now. This year was the 311th year. We've been continuing this because Don Diego de Vargas made that promise if he was able to resettle here, and they did, and they resettled here. So we've been living peacefully now for over 300 years with the natives, and the natives accepted him because once they left, those other tribes, those other Dene started to attack him again. So that's why they accepted him this time. And by the way, Popey was basically killed by his own people. Unfortunately, there's a monument, a statue of Popey in Washington, D.C. But that's another issue. So that's a little bit of the history that why we've been around for so long is because every year we're trying to keep that promise, and we still do all those things. We have processions, we have high masses, pontifical masses, we have vespers, we have a candlelight procession that goes from the cathedral all the way up to the cross of the martyrs, where it honors those priests, and we have the annual fiestas is what we do.
But
And the people, and the Spanish people, have been participating in all these for all these many years. Then we have this mayor that doesn't want to assimilate, that comes with his ideas, and he doesn't like our traditions, and he tries to change it. And that's what has caused the biggest problems right now. That's what we're facing right now.
Okay.
So we've been under 3 flags. Or
We're Spain,
Spain, yes, Mexico,
Spain, territorial, Confederate, territorial, and then the United States.
Okay, got it.